So moving on to the next part, I want to add some more items from our timeline here. Bitfinex was incorporated in Hong Kong. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, Bitfinex and iFinex, Bitfinex, and Tether, all in Hong Kong, right? So, or actually, it doesn't technically say that. It says iFinex is the, so it doesn't say specifically that Tether was in Hong Kong, but just Bitfinex. And I think we'll find out later that Tether was as well. But let's go by the information we have for right now. So if I want to add a country, I come up to my entity palette and I type in country. Now it's interesting to remember. So this is country, but I can also do region. So if I just want to do all of Africa or all of Europe or Eastern Europe, something specific, I can designate a region or I can do a city. So for Hong Kong, I've got a city. I want to bring my city over here. So I double click on it. Oops. I can double click on it to get to my properties, to my summary. And so my name is, well, if I type the name here actually in the city line, it'll change it for me. So Hong Kong, oops. And in the country, I can't talk right now, is China. So, and then I go to more. And what more does is it allows me to change this country code. I hope you saw it. So more just takes me over here to this properties tab. But if you look, the icon currently has the South African flag there. If I only change the summary country to China, that flag will remain, which is obviously incorrect. So I want to go to the country code, and for China it's CN. So I'll change it to CN. Now, just like the other entities, I can do notes. So I'm going to put my source of this information in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this just so it gives me even more context, and just put it right there. So, and then I'm going to go to attachments and attach. And like I said, I pulled down some icons before I started this, and so I've got the city symbol for Hong Kong here. So I just go to the ellipses, and I go to Hong Kong, attach, and then OK. And it takes a second to upload, but then I just highlight it so that it's orange and set it as the entity image, and now I'm all done, so I'm OK. So you can see here now I've got the Hong Kong city symbol. It designates that I've got notes. And much like that building remains down here and tells me what kind of note it is, I actually get the country's flag here that tells me that this is a region or a country and where it is. And it's been changed to China's flag. So, and I just left clicked it off of it to unhighlight it. So now what we want to do is draw the relationship to these. So we've got iFinex, which is a Hong Kong company, and Bitfinex, which is a Hong Kong company. So again, I'm going to want to left click on it real quick, left click and hold, and then move it. I actually meant just to left click on it when it's not highlighted and bring the arrow down. Now, this is where it was incorporated. So you can do all kinds of things, like you can put jurisdiction on there, legal jurisdiction, anything that designates that that's where this was incorporated. One thing to know, though, is so you can see incorporated, click OK. If I start using words this large, you can see how quickly this would become a very cluttered network analysis. So what I might consider doing is, and in order for me to change it, I have to go up here, toggle the link, and then select it, double click on the line. Maybe I'm going to start abbreviating, and I'll just put inked as in incorporated. And so there we go. So now we're starting to save some valuable canvas space here. And again, I can't highlight China to move it, so I go back to entity selection. While it's not highlighted, I left click, I drag an arrow to iFinex, and I do inked again because it was incorporated in Hong Kong. And now I can sort of organize it how I want, move it around. So that's a real quick use case for Maltego to build, to be able to build a network and see how things are going. So the next thing, well, let's do a couple more before we move on. So the next thing would be Bitfinex was incorporated in Hong Kong. Phil Potter runs the company, and then there's two other names. So now what I want to do is add people here. So again, I go here, I go to my entity palette and people. Now there are different types of people, and you can see there's meetings, meetings are social, so there's groups of people, and then there's a person. But yeah, so what I'm looking for is a business person, and that is just because the reason I'm concerned with Phil Potter is not Phil Potter as a person so much as it is his connection to a company. So it is a business person entity that I want to bring out here. And I honestly have no idea. It'd be a great question for Maltego. If when you're running a transform, and a transform is something that searches for you inside of Maltego, if the difference between a person entity and a business person entity affects that search. Specifically, if I run a transform on a business person, is it only searching LinkedIn and open corporates versus a person entity? Is it only, just basically doing an internet scrape or a social media search or whatever it does? I'm honestly not sure in the background the distinction between the two, but it's always just good to be as specific as you can. So I'm just going to highlight Phil Potter, Command C, Command V, and there we go. So we've got Phil Potter in there. I'm going to double click on it and get in here, and you can see that it's got his first name and his surname split apart, which autofills the full name. Properties, the same thing. So notes, once again, I'm going to copy the note that is related to him and where I got it. And then I'm going to go to attachments and attach, ellipses, and like I said, I'd already grabbed a shot of a picture of him, so I click attach, okay. It does take a second to upload. I highlight it and I set the entity image and I click OK. And great, so now I've got my little icon that says it is a business person entity. It tells me there's notes with it, and it's an actual picture of the Phil Potter. And I did verify that this is him. So now what I want to do is I want to draw the relationship. Well, let's put these other two gentlemen out here first. So again, they're both business relationships, so I'm going to put business people out here. The first one alongside CEO Jan Ludovicus van der Velde. I'm sure that is not how you pronounce that name. And I don't have a picture for him. Notes, you've seen how to do that, so we can worry about that some other time. You might consider breaking this up into first and last. You can do that at your discretion. I'm actually going to have to look. I'm pretty sure Jan is a first name. Just showing my ignorance of how these names work, but you can see how it puts it back together, but now it's just a little more accurate. But I honestly don't know if that's part of his first name or not. I don't know how that works. I'll look it up some other time. Okay, so we've got that. So, and then the second thing we have is the Giancarlo Devasini. Let's see if it, nope, it did not recognize it. I thought maybe it would split it up for me, but it did not. So I think maybe it splits it up for you if you do it on the node. When you do it on the entity, maybe it does. So again, attachments, notes, properties. Okay. So now I've got these three business people that have relationships all to Bitfinex. So let's start with the first one, Phil Potter. I am going to left click on my canvas to unhighlight Devasini. I'm going to left click and hold on Bitfinex and go to Phil Potter. And the relationship is that Phil Potter, it doesn't specify the relationship. You can see it just says that he's running the company alongside the CEO. So I'm going to put director for now, just to let me know that he has an executive position, but put a question mark there until I further identify what his exact role is. And then I'm going to do the same thing, left click and hold. And Jan was the CEO. So I'm going to put CEO. And then CFO for Devasini. So now you can see that I've got nice relationships all with the companies. So then you can come over here once this starts to get larger, and you can do a nice hierarchical relationship. Maybe move these around so that you can see who they are. So you can see that you've got the region, and then you've got the companies, and there's a parent-child relationship with the companies, and then a relationship with who is working where. And as this gets fleshed out, this will really get complex. It may be better to view it from a relationship of centrality, where we're, Bitfinex is our focal point and what comes out of it. It may be convenient to be able to highlight and then move, and then highlight and then move each entity so that we can really try to tell a story with, maybe how money transfers were flowing or things like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to go down through the rest of this timeline and add in the rest of our nodes. And once we have that, we can really start to discuss and see what the ecosystem was surrounding the initial hack back in 2016. And then we'll step into the Razzlekahn duo and see that flesh out their network in the same way and start to see if any of it does actually overlap at all. Okay, so I've finished going through the entire timeline here and pulling out all of the entities of just sort of the very broad swaths of events leading up to the Bitfinex hack. And what you end up with is this just this nice little link chart that sort of tells us how these things are connected. And then like I mentioned, the next step will be to dig into Heather and Dutch's lives and see if any of it overlaps. You've got everything from the key players in Bitfinex to BitCo, which was where the actual hack took place. And then this is the actual address. It was 2,000 separate transactions out of BitCo, and it all congregated into this address. So that's sort of the egress point. Even some small details, like this particular Twitter account has been very aggressive about, accusing Bitfinex of orchestrating this massive fraud, which is sort of the larger discussion around the hack itself, which is why this is so interesting, because it does seem like there was so much corruption surrounding all of these companies. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, we'll find out more soon, obviously, that Dutch had a relationship of some kind with BitGo. So curious to see what we find there. One interesting thing that I found was, so in the Yahoo article, it does mention that how we know Tether is owned by the same people, the same two people as Bitfinex, is because it was exposed in the Panama Papers, and apparently that was where that exposure came out. These two are named, Phil and Devasini, are named directly in the Panama Papers with Tether. One thing that the article doesn't note is when you go to the Panama Papers, this address in Ontario is exposed as the office address for Tether. And that address, when you basically just Google it, you end up with a lawyer's name, and the attorney in Ontario associated with this address is a cryptocurrency attorney. So just one more interesting little tidbit that I'm curious to see if that attorney's name pops up again. This isn't sort of a traditional fraud, but whenever you're doing any fraud investigation, when you start seeing attorneys, they sort of become key pivot points to finding other information. So the idea is that this is all built. Another thing is, once it's all complete, you do end up with, you can just double click on it, you sort of end up with these nice little entity baseball cards. It's sort of just got your quick summary of the properties over on this side in the picture attachment, and then any notes that you've got. So you could really, beef these notes up and have great descriptions and have it so that it exports into very very nice baseball cards for a report. So, but that's it. So this is what you end up with at the end of this article. And the great thing is we've got this perfect starting point if we want to run down the cryptocurrency rabbit hole or the sort of larger ecosystem as we do start to unravel Dutch and Heather's lives.